When you are in undergraduate colleges, of course it helps what type of college you go to. What I would recommend is this. If you are keen on going to medical school, if you've made up your mind in high school, you can try looking at all the 7-year programs that we have in the United States. There are some colleges that offer 7-year programs where undergraduate and medical schools are combined. Now, they are very competitive, obviously, because they will want to choose like the cream of the crop. So you don't have those in every state, but you definitely should apply to them, and I think it's worthwhile applying to them if you're head on straight about going to medical school after you graduate from college. Now, let's say you do want to do a bio major, but you're not exactly sure, like, do I want to go down the medicine route, or do I want to go down the research route, or just something else in general. Then that's fine. Go ahead and apply to whichever college you would like, and then basically go from there. So let's talk about how we do when we are in undergraduate colleges. As doctors and as medical school committees who look at applications all the time, believe me, they get bored after seeing the person do the same things. So you kind of want to stand out, and I've actually been on committees where I picked and chose the applicants. So you don't want to choose the same person again and again who was a valedictorian, did great in undergrad, did a bio major, went to different kind of experiences through hospitals, shadowed somebody, just blah, blah, blah. That just makes it sound very boring. And you know for sure that person really, really wants to do medicine. What I would recommend, and actually this is where I did something different, so I'm going to start bringing in some personal stories of myself and actually some really good friends that I know of, so that you guys can actually keep this in touch and maybe even use it for your applications. So number one, I did want to try to go to a 7-year program, medical school, but then something came up and I was like, no, I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do. So GW for sure, like on the East Coast, I know has the 7-year program, so you can try going into GW. Of course, now this is a private university. If there are other ones, I know there's one in Missouri, there's one in Texas, under Texas Tech University. So there's obviously a lot of different kind of universities that offer the 7-year programs. Now, you can go to the state school, the public schools, or you can go to a private undergraduate, and then while you're there, obviously go through your undergraduate courses, and then when it comes starting to apply for medical school, you're going to start doing different things. So this is what I would recommend. First and foremost, we're going to go through a list of what you should do in terms of your medical experiences. And I'm actually I have this printed out, and I really like this. It's from the Princeton Review. It's like a timeline so that it helps students see what they can do their first year of college, their second year of college, third and fourth year, so that you're never behind. Unfortunately, in the medical world, if you are keen on doing certain things and you fall behind, then it really is a detrimental thing, because there's a lot of deadlines, and if you don't make that deadline, then unfortunately you have to reapply next year, or you just have to do things at a different time. So let's talk about the medical experience. Let's say, obviously you really love biology. Then go for a biology degree. Do something in the science field if that's your interest. Now, let's say you like biology, but you know that you're not going to get a good grade, like a GPA, while you're an undergrad. Then don't go for biology. What I would recommend, and honestly, hearing from other schools too, when they're looking at applicants, they really want a person who's cool at the same time, but knowledgeable. So if you're really smart in your medical, biological sciences, then that's great. But if you ended up majoring in art or social studies, history, Spanish, then it's like, whoa, this person's not just cool in the medical field, but they're also cool in the art world. It's like, okay, they're not just using one side of their brain, they're kind of using both sides of their brain, because one side is the mathematical, medical related, side of the brain that uses things, algorithms, whereas the other side is like very artsy, it likes to read, so on and forth. When you're really well-rounded, that's exactly what they want. So in terms of your medical experience, obviously go ahead and have your background in the main biological academic areas that you need. So I would recommend obviously taking the certain type of courses that you need. So if you're a biology major, that's easy, because what happens is when you start your first year in college, you have your advisor who goes through this whole list of courses, and it's like, you're going to have to choose from A, B, and C, and this is what you're going to do the rest of your 3 years. But if you're not a scientific major, what you need to do is obviously complete your major courses in that major, but at the same time, complete these pre-medical courses. Now, I know most of you guys already know this stuff, and I'm glad, but my whole point of telling you this is so that we can talk about the timeline. So let's turn this over a little bit. I don't know how well you guys can see this, but this is what I want you guys to focus on. So on your first year, what I want you to understand is that most of the courses are general. You have your chemistry, you have your calculus, your biology, your English, and other things. It is at this time that really I would agree with, this timeline, that you start looking at healthcare related volunteer projects or programs. For example, you can actually join the Red Cross. Almost every college in the United States has a Red Cross program. They also have what's called AMSA. It stands for the American Medical Student Association. And again, being part of these things is a great idea, because they can actually help you in terms of getting the right type of resources and eventually getting a good grade on the MCATs. And then if you keep on looking at this, we have research academic societies, pre-med clubs, student organizations. So what I recommend here is, obviously this is your freshman year. Your GPA is the most important. So if you feel like you getting involved in any type of clubs or extracurricular stuff is going to make your GPA go down, then I really wouldn't recommend that, because at the end of the day, when you are applying to medical schools, yes, your GPA matters in the sense that they would like for it to be higher than 3.5, but they will not accept you if you're less than that and you were really too social, unless you have something really outstanding like a research project. So again, these are just helpful hints as to what you could do as your first year. All right, so let's go to the second. So now on to sophomore year. So again, you have your main requirements: chemistry, psychology, or sociology. And then this is actually where, if you didn't enjoy it or were not sufficiently challenged, begin a new one immediately. What do I mean by that? So this is where you should start finding things. For example, researching into your medical school, what you think you would like, where you think you would fit in. And again, seek professors and make a good network while you're on that campus, because believe me, even if your professor is the departmental head of English, he can get you connections, or he can help introduce you to other professors who are asking students to do some kind of research. So networking goes a long, long way. And this is the best time to build really good relationships, as well as, kind of building yourself. I think everybody says that, when you're in college, it's a time to grow. It's a time to discover yourself. So, join clubs, but at the same time, see where you fit in. What's your niche? What makes you really happy? What do you enjoy doing? And then now let's go over to junior year. So again, simple, basic subjects that you should consider doing at this time: physics, biochemistry, and believe me, biochemistry I would say is a must. Even though at this time medical schools don't really require it as a requirement, especially if you're not a bio major, but because when you first come into medical school and it's so rigorous, I feel like if you have some kind of background when you've already taken an undergrad, it will really help you along the way eventually. So I would highlight it if you can. So I'm going to pause here for a second. Any questions or concerns before I jump to, continuing with junior year and talking about the most important part, which everyone kind of, fears or likes to get away with, the MCATs? Okay, I don't see any questions or concerns, so that's great. All right, so let's talk about the MCATs. This is your junior year, and honestly, this is exactly the best time when you should be thinking about your MCATs. So during the fall semester, the best thing I would recommend is that you guys start thinking about how to study for the MCATs. What I did specifically was that I went through. Sorry, I believe my phone is, yeah, you can hear my text messages. I apologize. Okay, so what I would recommend is coming up with a plan as to how to study for the MCATs. What I did was that I bought the books from Kaplan, and they're pretty cheap. Of course, buying all these resources, especially when you're getting into medical school, you'll see it can add up eventually. So I can also guide you in terms of how to kind of save things and kind of be smart about that. But I would get some type of books and start looking at yourself. So I did do the Kaplan course, and the way I did the Kaplan course was this. AMSA, which is an organization in your school, can actually come to you and offer some kind of promotion that Kaplan is offering. And that actually worked out really well. So what happened was that Kaplan actually really wants students throughout the year, and they will offer some kind of discounts or special events or special classes. So take advantage of that. For example, let me give you an idea. So Kaplan would offer this one course on like physics, and they would offer that, let's say, like during the night after maybe all of your classes have finished for the day, and it's free. It's like, hey, come join us. It's one free session. See what our courses are about. So I think it's a great idea. You're getting. Oh, sorry, I did see a question. Okay. If my GPA wasn't so great, what are other ways to make me stand out as an applicant? Wonderful. Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So backtrack a little bit. If your GPA isn't that good, what I would recommend is this. If you still have maybe junior year or senior year left, I would take some easy classes that you can get an A in to help boost up your GPA. Also, if you can take any summer courses that are easy, that can boost up your GPA. And here's a fun fact, and I know most colleges do this. So I did research in one of my summer months when I was there for undergrad, and that gets counted as 6 credits. So that goes a huge, long way. If you can do something like that, then I think that will really help boost your GPA. Now, the second part of the question is, obviously, if you cannot boost your GPA, even when you've tried doing other courses, what could you do? Then I would say really stand out. And when I say really stand out, that would require you to be like maybe a co-lead or the director of this certain organization that you started, or you are really active in some kind of organization that was nonprofit, or some kind of volunteer work or research. Now, research really goes a long way. If you can really get yourself into some kind of research, yes, you can become a lab rat at some point. In colleges, really a lot of professors are looking for students just to help them so that they can finish their pipetting, cleaning their beakers, like simple stuff that it's, as we would say, like, lab rat kind of work. But what happens is, once the professor sees how well you're doing the work and you're dedicated, they can actually, start asking you or even recommending, like, hey, would you consider working for me for the next semester? Or would you consider working for me, after courses or after your classes? Certain researchers will not pay, and I think, personally, and also after hearing it from a lot of friends, if you find a research professor who is willing to include you in his research, which means that not only will you work with him in his lab, but you will also be able to write the paper and be included in the paper or the grant, and it's not paid, it doesn't matter. In the long term, that goes a long way. So yes, in the short term, you're working a lot, you're being a lab rat, you're not getting paid for this, but believe me, when you start applying for medical school, and not just medical school, when you start applying for residencies or even fellowships later down the line, or even a job, any type of interview that comes along, even if it's not medical related. When you show that you've submitted something and it's been published, that means a lot. That shows commitment, it shows hard work, and it also shows that you're able to work with another team member, especially those, who are pretty much very smart, and that's why they're in the research field. So I hope that helps answer the question. Let me know, can somebody reply and say if that helped, or do you want me to focus on something else and go deeper into that question? I think it's a little slow when it comes to getting responses on my phone. Okay, so I do have another question in the meantime. It says, how could LAMP assist me throughout this process? So this is a good question. Like myself, I signed up for LAMP as a mentor. So obviously this is, something that I would like to do on my free time. Believe me, I don't really have much free time while I'm working at the hospital or in my clinic, even as a resident. But what I would say is this. I came, here first and foremost from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no doubt about that. Your creator, your Lord Almighty, like He will help you throughout anything that you want to do. It doesn't have to be medicine in general. However, what I do think is also important, and I feel like everyone should take from this webinar, is that there's always a good mentor along the way. There was somebody who took your finger. There was somebody who, patted you on the back and said, you did a great job. Why don't you think about this? Or when you obviously failed your first chemistry test. I've been there, done that. Believe me, orgo was not my thing. Chemistry was not my thing. But when you first go ahead and fail something, it hurts. You realize, you've basically, are nothing, and how are you going to get back up on your A game? So I've had good mentors along the way. They've not just been my medical mentors from undergrad, but they've been obviously friends and some people I just worked with along the way and who became almost like family. So when I said earlier that you're an undergrad and I want you to focus on making relationships, especially with professors, that means a lot. I have a lot of professors right now, even to this day. Like, I've left undergrad now for a long time, over 4 years, and they will email me just to check up on me and be like, how are you doing? We're so proud of you where you are, and then they'll bring up maybe an incident like, during those old good times, we used to do something. So what I want you to understand is this: a LAMP, again, has these mentors that have gone through the same experiences, or they have already gone through the stuff that you will be going through, or, are going through as of right now, and they can try to help you. Now, everybody's different, so it doesn't mean that my personal experience will be the same for you. And even if I have a certain type of advice, it might not always fit you. But what we can do is come up with different solutions, because, we've had friends, we've had other people who've gone through the same things or the same issues, and they've had different experiences, but they've all told us. So at least this way, it's a good network within ourselves, and especially for Muslims, because I feel like sometimes we're just very quiet. Our parents always tell us, like, be the quiet one, don't be the obnoxious one in class, always raising your hands, or, being the annoying one in class. So I feel like, having a good network of other Muslims who are really dedicated to what they do and what they love as part of their jobs, and having them as mentors and even like friends, will go a long way. Will help you not only in what you need to do, but give you that, sense of comfort. Like, somebody's out there, somebody's patting my back, somebody's got my shoulder. They really understand how tough it is. So I think, that's what I can say in terms of that question. Anything else? And I just want to imply though, like if you think about it, mentoring, the word mentoring itself, it is a relationship that is developed through to help a coach or motivate and train leadership and career skills, in a specific field of interest. So it's not just a rewarding process where you're earning something from it, monetary wise or financially wise. It's this type of feeling that you've passed on education. My grandfather actually used to have a very good quote. He was one of my mentors, and he always wrote different kinds of quotes. So growing up, I would actually listen to his quotes and imply them, and I even actually used one in my application for med school. He says, people come and go, and, lives can at one point pass away, but education or instilling a new idea or teaching somebody, that has roots that can spread. Even if that person passes away, that knowledge that you passed on will eventually pass on to someone else, and then they will keep it going. So education never dies. And if you are that mentor, subhanAllah, like, you don't really need, again, financial or monetary gain, because at the end of the day, you will be rewarded for what good deeds you did. So I think, as Muslims, mashallah, that is usually one of our big things that we're taught. Like, we should always help each other out. And, that's been instilled on us. And I feel like at the end of the day, when you tell that to a program, that you're applying to, or a medical school that you're applying to, that, I'm really committed to helping other people, I'm really committed to making a difference, they really see that as a compassionate person, as an altruistic person, because they don't want to make doctors who are really insincere or, have this type of ego and are really mean. Their goal is, like, if I make a really good doctor, they'll remember what medical school they came from. So that's that. So again, I really think LAMP, I know it's a new organization, but at the same time, we have a very good team. Haider and myself, we will definitely do whatever we can to try to help you. Please always email us if we don't get back to you right away. We apologize, especially because we all have busy schedules, but the best thing we want to see is all of you guys succeed and, get where you want to go with what you have, inshallah. All right, so let's talk about the MCATs. I think now, like 9:32, I feel like that's an important discussion now. So looking at the MCATs, I was just kind of hinting at it earlier, but it does go a long way, I would say, in terms of your application process. So this is a key thing that I've noticed programs or med schools do. When they get an application, now they're going to get hundreds of applications, and they have, let's say 50 seats, or, some programs have 150 seats to fill. And the way they do it is they make piles, okay? So first and foremost, they will check your MCAT scores and make sure you pass them. So obviously, please pass your MCAT scores. If you don't pass it, or if you don't get a good grade, I would highly recommend that you repeat your MCAT. Now, as a fall, when you are a junior, take your MCATs done. Usually the results come back within a couple of weeks. If you did not do well, you have time to make it up. So obviously use that spring semester during your junior year to repeat it, okay? And let's say you got an okay score, but you feel like you could do better. Then what I would recommend is you could still apply if you're in that process time where you're like, oh God, I gotta apply to medical school, but I haven't gotten a good MCAT score, then that's okay. Apply to the medical school, but mention somewhere in your personal statement that, I've improved a lot since I first started studying for this, and I believe with the resources and with the amount of studying and the changes that I've made, I will do even better. When you write that in your personal statement, they will actually see that as a positive thing, because, again, they know that doctors are simple human beings. You must have failed at something. Earlier I mentioned, like, you could easily have failed in your chemistry test while you were in college. So if you did not do well on your MCAT scores, that does not mean you're not a good doctor, because life is going to bring you interesting things even when you're a doctor, and sometimes you can't figure it out. So, it doesn't mean you're a bad doctor. The whole point is that you have that attitude where you're going to keep on pushing yourself to understand and fix the issues or to become better. So that's the key part, what I would say, like in terms of, when you're starting to do the MCATs, what should you do? I mentioned it earlier when I said there are different programs out there, and you could do Kaplan, you could do Princeton Review, you could study yourself. I know there are a lot of programs out there as of right now. If you would like for somebody to teach you things, I think it's worthwhile, paying the money and going through Kaplan or Princeton Review. However, if you have a buddy system, 2 people, you guys are in the same class, you've been in undergrad all this time, just get together, make a study group, and start studying. Because the best way to learn anything is to teach each other. So not only will you be, learning the stuff in your head, but you're teaching another person, and when they don't understand something, but you're like, but I understand it, then you think of it in a different way. And when, the other person finally gets it, you're like, oh, wait, there's something that I learned that I didn't realize earlier. So, teaching, again, goes a very, very long way. So, form a study club. I would recommend that. You can always get old books from different kind of websites, or you can even borrow them from, the library or some other places. So that's not an issue. The other thing I would really recommend is doing a lot of questions. So people always ask this question, like, hey, I read those books, for the MCATs, I did the workbook and whatnot. The test itself has been changed over the years. So when I took it, I didn't really have the essay portion. I just had the physics section, the orgo section, the English section, and the bio section. What I would really recommend for those kind of sections is that you repeat your questions, or you just keep on answering more and more questions, because even though the test does not come with the same questions when you take it, the thinking process behind those questions is exactly the same. They want to test a certain thing. Can you do this or not? Can you calculate this or not? So if you can do more questions and understand how you went about and got those answers, then that really will help you. In terms of the essay, what I would recommend is reading. So this is actually a very good story. My medical school director, I would say, he was the dean. So during my interview, I actually got a chance to talk to him, and then he actually asked a question that I thought was pretty interesting. He said, do you read a lot of literature? And I was like, yes, I've read a lot of books. Obviously you take English lit and you take different kind of courses when you're an undergrad, so you have to read books. And he's like, no, I'm not talking about stories, where you read Shakespeare's literature or poems or that kind of stuff. I'm talking about journals, medical journals, or just journals in general. And then I said, no, actually, I might, if something was really interesting that they showed on the news, then I might go research it, but I haven't made it a habit to read them. And then he asked, well, what about newspaper? The local newspaper, or the Washington Times, the New York Times, the Baltimore Sun, whatever. Even your local newspaper if you live in a small town. And then I was like, yeah, I used to read them before, but I think, during maybe my juniors and senior year, I kind of did not read them as much as I could. And then he said, exactly. And he said, I picked up on those things when I saw your English, the score on my English part of the exam. And I'm like, really? How did you know that? And he goes, well, because if you're well-read, not in those kind of books that you read in college for your courses, but actual literature where they talk about world events, where they talk about research, where they talk about things that are going on, those are real things, but the way they're worded, it's harder for you to understand because they're not simple English. You have to make the effort to understand them, but eventually, once you've read so much of them, it goes a long way, and your English basically improves. So I know that was a long story, but point of the story is this, that if you can start doing it now, it's a lot easier. Start picking up the newspaper every day or every other day or whenever, but start reading it more often, front to back. Just not reading the main headlines. I would really recommend that you read certain sections of the newspaper that, are not fun and interesting, because the way you're reading the English and the way things are worded, you should pick up like, okay, what's the point of this story, or what's the point of this segment in the article? Why are they getting this across to me? It helps build up your habits, and eventually that will help you not only when you're taking the MCATs, but also when you are in medical school, because the amount of information that they give you, it's a lot, and it's not in simple English terms, and it's definitely not, as we say, whenever you're teaching somebody, try to make it at a 5th grade level or at a middle school level. But when you're in med school, all those terms are very technical. They're at a very, very higher level. So you have to learn a certain type of vocabulary. You have to talk a certain way. So again, if you're very well read, that will go a long way. So I talked about that. Heather, is there anything else that, you think in particular we should talk about the MCATs? You do have to pay for the MCATs. The website you can go to register, it's aamc.org. I think right now it's $300. I don't remember if they've changed the fee or not. But again, that's a good website that you should go to make sure that you've registered and done a good job. Okay, so I think we've talked a lot about the main things. What else I would just recommend is a personal statement that when you're going to apply to the medical school. And then I do have something else that I think we will talk about. But in terms of the personal statement, again, it's called personal. So why they want to read this? They don't want to see your whole resume. What medical school and these application committees are looking for is, what kind of person am I taking under my wing? I understand that they've done all these cool things. They were in the band. They used to play the violin. They used to be, or a head or organizer of this certain event. But not only that, they led the whole Red Cross. They were the captain of their soccer team. Those are cool things. You're not just a doctor who's focused again on medical stuff, but you're doing all kinds of things. When you write the personal statement, it's words that are coming from you to them. You don't want to repeat the exact things that you've written in the application. So what does that mean? That means that if I were to tell you to write a resume, what you would do is write your name, write your email, your contact information, and then you would write down things like, in 2010, I volunteered, or this is what I did research in. When you actually have to sit down and write the personal statement, you can incorporate something that's really important. For example, if you've done some kind of really good research, then write it. Why did you go into that research? What kind of passion did you have? Why did you pursue it? That's important to them, because it's like you committed so much time, and you were sitting in a lab, or you were walking around in the streets trying to get a survey. What made you do that, and what did you get out of it? Even if it's not something that ended up being the best. For example, let's say you did the research and you found out that your question that you asked, it wasn't exactly what you were looking for, and your test results didn't really show great results, then it's fine. But you still mention that. You're like, this study just goes to show that if nobody else had done it, our results were not as important, or they did not come out to be as important as, we thought they would have been. So any small things when it comes to describing, again, is important. For me, and I feel like a lot of my friends, what we did, and I feel like that's mainly because it just seemed more important, personal stories. So if you, and I can give you simple ones that, as applicant committees would love to hear. It's sad, but at the same time they really like it. if you have a certain person in your family or somebody really close to you that passed away from a certain type of disease, it can be a rare disease, it doesn't have to be a rare disease, but the fact that they passed away, and you are just so determined and you are just so willing to, in their name or because of all the experiences that they gave you, you're going to work hard to become a really good doctor so that you can help train these guys. Like, that's good. They want to see that because, again, they know that you have some kind of determination and motivation to do what you want to do. So personal stories like that are great. That's good. Now, I wouldn't really say something like, if you come from a family line of doctors, like, oh, my dad's a doctor, my grandfather was a doctor, my sister's a doctor, so that's why I want to do medicine. No, they definitely won't like that, because it's just like saying, okay, it's nice that you want to be a doctor, but why do I care? You've got to have, again, some kind of motive, and it should be a good motive, because at the end of the day, they want to make these altruistic, compassionate doctors. So come up with a story. If not a story, come up with a good project you did. Or, for example, I know some really good friends, they started this nonprofit organization. So especially, and I think you guys have had all of these kind of organizations in your colleges where they started collecting sandals or shoes or books, and they send them abroad to, Africa, in towns that did not have them. That's great. Or you could do I started this toothbrush drive where I could send this to, Haiti, where they don't have any toothbrushes. That's great. Do that, That's something that's important, and it goes a long way. That shows that you, not only are you able to become a really good leader, but you can actually have a good cause, and it's not just here in the United States, it goes around globally. So I think that goes a long way. So I have a question. Have you faced any challenges a Muslim in the medical field? If so, how did you deal with them? Yeah, I would definitely say yes. So as a Muslim, you sometimes stick out really well, especially if you have to go pray or you're fasting, and especially when something's going on in the media. You stick out very well if they know about your name. Obviously, your names kind of give it away. What I would suggest is be yourself, no matter what. In the sense that, I feel like my parents always taught me, and also, Islam mashallah is so beautiful in the sense that it teaches us to be such good people, humble people at the same time. And you went into the field of medicine to be humble. So act like that, And when negative things or people are making fun of you, they're calling you different kind of names, just to be funny. Because, when you start medical school and then you go any time further, people are going to make fun of you. Some people are just like that. Just let it go. It's not worth debating over, and it's not worth getting heated over. I guess how you would avoid that, there's two things you could do. Let's say, now this is a little bit, I think, just being in the medical field itself and you're actually working, if you feel like there's something that's really bothering you at work, whether it's a person itself or whether it's something that they did, and I do have actually an example of that, but I feel like everybody goes through something, so I'm just going to keep it generic. But the solution is this: you go through your program director, or you go through somebody who's an authority, and you let them know, like, hey, look, I'm hardworking, I get along very well with other people, and this particular thing is really bothering me, and I feel like it's affecting my work. Once you tell them that it's affecting your work, they make it their point to change that. Okay? So instead of, if that person who's doing it is a close friend and they're just kind of being funny and really weird, and if you feel like they're approachable, then go ahead and approach them and just let them know, like, hey, I don't, just as a courtesy, I don't really like what you're doing. But if you feel like it's somebody, from another department, or just somebody who you feel like you're not very comfortable talking to, don't get into a heated debate, because once you get into a heated debate, gets into a big drama, and people don't remember exactly the details or who was innocent or who didn't do anything wrong. They just remember drama, and then it's like playing a telephone game. You just, make up one thing and another person hears something else, and then they make up something, and then it just becomes something really weird all over. So I guess the best way I would say to deal with it, and I feel like I do it myself, is that if it's an uncomfortable situation, I go ahead and talk to somebody who's an authority. So that could be like, obviously a principal, that could be your professor if you are in undergrad, or if you're in medical school, obviously your professor there, or if you want to go to somebody higher, go and talk to your dean. They're there to listen to you for a reason. I was very good with my deans. Like, I went with them on different kind of trips, and I was part of the student organization when I was in medical school, so they knew me pretty well. So I felt like they always had my back. They were always very kind to me. I don't think I ever came across a situation where, if something was bothering me and I told them that they didn't handle it well enough. So I think that's what I would do. And then if it doesn't get handled either way, just let it go. Hopefully, inshallah, you'll be rewarded for the good things you do, and bad things come around. So just let it be. The other person, sometimes I really feel bad for what's going on, because if somebody was to bother you in terms of being a Muslim, they don't really understand what's going on. So let it go. They'll eventually figure it out. If they don't figure it out, make it so that you're not getting worried, or it's not gonna affect you in the worst possible way, because especially if you are in a community where it's all not minorities and you're the only minority, then people start picking sides, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to be in a situation where people end up picking sides. So I hope that helps. If that didn't answer your question, just feel free to email me, and we can chat together and we can discuss in detail. I just feel like this is a webinar, so we're going to keep it kind of generic. Anything else, guys? So it's like 9:56. I'll leave it open if we have any more questions in the meantime. Okay, so what would be the best way for someone applying to a particular medical school to learn more about that school? Is there any way to make yourself stand out to them outside of the application? Yes. If you know where you really want to go, search about that school, everything. Like, what their mission statement is, who's on faculty. If you know somebody on faculty, but, you've heard of their name, but you don't know them that well, I would make it a point to get to know them. That means you can just send them an email, be like, hi, I'm introducing myself, this is such and such, and I just wanted to share my experiences that I've had, and I would really like to come to your place. If it's a faculty member and they're not on the application committee, but you made that point to go ahead and contact them, that means something. And you can always have some kind of network. For example, if you know somebody knows, somebody in that medical school, but they're not on faculty, maybe they're just a secretary, that's fine. People can get into medical school with just word of mouth. So if you happen to know somebody, let them know, like, hey, I'm really interested in this, and would you just pass on a good message or a good word about me? And when you are actually writing your personal statement, I would mention that. Be like, I was really inspired by this such and such person who works at this medical school and always talks so highly of you. So go ahead and mention their names. The other way I would say to stand out is every medical school has some kind of programs that they do at other undergraduate schools. So they'll hold like this fair, where like a medical fair, or just something in general, like a healthcare fair, where all these drug companies come at your undergrad, and some medical schools show up. Go and introduce yourselves when they hold that booth. It's not always a faculty member who's there, but those I guess student doctors who are there, they're ambassadors to that medical school and they take that word back, like, hey, you know, I met this student and his name is blank, and he was really interested and he talked with us a lot. So go ahead and go with them, you know, like definitely go talk to them and leave your contact information, and even ask them, like, would you be okay if I emailed you and asked you more questions? And believe me, people like that because they feel like you're interested, you know. Don't just say random things.